Ancient coins are very different from collecting American coins. They're incredibly varied and very difficult to get into without knowing anything. So over the next 5 or so minutes, I'm going to try to give you a very basic understanding of what you're looking for so you have some idea going in. Coinage developed in 3 different places in fairly unique traditions. It developed in China as cast coins that were usually round with a square hole in the center and primarily text. They developed in India as punchmark coins, in which case a sheet of metal was rolled out, cut apart, and then usually 5 different individual symbols were stamped onto each coin. Finally, it developed in the Western world in primarily the Greek tradition, where they were struck and there was a single design struck onto both the obverse and the reverse as they developed. The Greek tradition became the Roman tradition when the Romans took over, and Roman coins are what we're going to be focusing on because they are readily available. They are primarily inexpensive if you're going for lower quality ones, and they are the easiest to identify. They do have, Roman lettering, they have pretty consistent legends, and they're just a lot easier to get into. There are a lot of resources on them as well. So when you're first looking at a coin, you need to identify what is on it. So looking at the obverse, there will be a portrait of someone to determine which is the obverse, and there will almost always be a legend going around the outside of the coin. You want to try to read this. This is the most important element of the coin as far as identifying it, so do your best. They can be really hard to read when you're first getting into it because of the font. Keep in mind that Romans did not have the letter U. If it should be a U, they used a V. So that's something to keep in mind, and some of the letters are really tricky, like an N can look like 3 I's instead. So just keep your mind open. They also commonly used a lot of abbreviations in their legends, and there's a pretty good list of them in link 1 in the description. 2 of the most common ones that I've run into are IMP at the beginning of the legend, meaning emperor, and AVG at the end, meaning Augustus, which was essentially another word for emperor in their culture. So once you have looked at the legend, then you want to look at the obverse device, which is the portrait. You want to try and figure out and ascertain as many different things about it as you can, such as which way is it facing? Is it left or right? Do they have any kind of headgear? There are many different types of headgear, and a lot of them are pretty easy to tell apart. Link 2 in the description has a pretty good list of them, so that's something you want to point out. So moving on to the reverse types are incredibly varied. So they do usually have a legend, similar to the obverse, going on the outside of the coin, and there isn't really a standard format. They don't have a lot of really common abbreviations like the obverse does, so do your best. The reverse device is the main image in the center of the coin. These are tricky, especially when you're first getting into it. It can be really hard to figure out what you're looking at. And because they are so widely varied, there's no comprehensive list of this is this. So you just gotta kind of wing it for a little while. There are some kind of typical reverses. There are Campgate reverses, Romulus and Remus suckling from a wolf, and soldiers with standards. That one is probably the most common reverse. You get a little tired of them after a while. And when I first got into it, I could not find anywhere that would give me a description of what a standard is. As far as I can tell, it is an oblong rectangle with a lot of symbols. So keep that in mind. That is the standard. So try to describe the reverse device. If you can't, it's not a huge deal. It's just kind of fun to try, honestly. And then finally, on the reverse, there will commonly be something in exergue. This is the space below the reverse device, and it's usually a mint mark. There is a list of mint marks in link 3 below. So overall, for both sides of the coin, link 4 has a pretty good overview of the different things that you should be looking for and trying to describe. So if you want more information on that, check that out. I found it really helpful when I was getting started. So once you have looked at the coin, it's time to try to attribute it. You can define attribution in many different ways. Maybe you just want to know what emperor is minted under and about when it was minted, and that's fine. Maybe you want to be able to describe the obverse and reverse devices and know what the legends are supposed to say. Or maybe you want to go all the way and know the RIC number. RIC numbers are taken from a British catalog produced between 1923 and 1994. They are known as the Roman Imperial Coinage catalogs, and they essentially assign numbers to all of the known and identified types at that time. So there are coins that are not included in that index, but it is the most standard reference. It's pretty comprehensive, and it's the standard for identifying ancient Roman coins. So personally, I really like to have the RIC number, but it's up to you if you want to feel that's a requirement. So to actually figure that out, there are 3 main websites that I look at. The first one I go to is OCRE. It is link 5 below, and it's a very user-friendly website. They have an identify a coin button at the top. So you can click on that and then type in what you believe the obverse and reverse legends are and hope something comes up. And even if that website does give me like a definitive, this is the only coin that matches your legends, I will almost always cross-check it with Wildwinds, which is link 6 below. So Wildwinds is a little bit less user-friendly, but it depends on what you can read. If, say, all you can read on your coin, as far as the legends go, is on the obverse, it says IMPGO. That's not going to get you very far on OCRE. But you can assume that IMP is the abbreviation for emperor, and it's logical to believe that GO is the beginning of the emperor's name. So the link that I have below to Wildwinds will take you to a list of emperors alphabetically. So all you have to do at that point is scroll down to the G's, find the ones that start with GO, and just click on the first one and start scrolling. You can view the page with thumbnails and then just scroll for hours on end until you find something that looks like your reverse. The last website that I use for attribution is link 7 below, and it's very different from the other 2. It actually has Excel spreadsheets that you can download that are organized by common types. So like if you have a camp gate reverse, you can download a spreadsheet of all of the camp gate reverses and then filter it. So say you know it's the camp gate, but you can't read any of the legends. This might get you an answer because you can sort it by, okay, I know the bust is facing right, I know there are 6 layers of bricks, and I know it is a laureate bust. That will narrow it down. And finally, one other point, I would encourage you to go a step beyond attribution. For me, one of the most rewarding things about ancient coins is being able to decode them. So the ancient Romans used coins as a medium of disseminating information. They used them to share news. They used them as propaganda. And so if you look up, okay, this is the emperor, look up what they achieved. What did they do during their reign? What was going on in history at the time that this coin was minted? And then, on the reverse, if there is a deity, what did they represent? What did they mean to the Roman people? And try to translate the legends. What are they trying to say about these 2 different elements? And when you put all that together, you might be able to figure out what this coin was trying to say to the Roman people. And that's what I find most rewarding. I think it's really cool to be able to look at a piece and say, yes, this was trying to tell the people this. I highly encourage you to take a look at ancients if you haven't. They're incredibly interesting and hold a ton of history. So if you have any resources that you've discovered that you'd like to share, by all means, put them in the comments, help other people out, and otherwise, happy searching!